The invitation, and the community college system evolves so quickly. A lot changes in 2 years, so it's a pleasure to come and give you all updates this morning. Show of hands, how many in the room are familiar with Lord Fairfax Community College? That's a good sign. How many of you all realize Lord Fairfax is just one of 23 colleges in the Virginia community college system? All right, awesome. A lot of folks don't realize we're unique in the nation as being part of a fabric of a community college system. Many states' community colleges are individual silos in their state. We're part of the network, and that gives us leverage. So our community college system actually represents the highest enrolled students in higher ed in all of Virginia. Collectively, we have more students than UVA, Virginia Tech, and JMU combined. So it's a pretty large system, and again, that leverage brings a lot of power to the community college. The college itself is made up of both academic and credentialing programs, and the academic programs are things that you all are probably familiar with. We're just like any business or organization. We get into our silos and build chiefdoms. So the academic programs are often referred to as the credit programs. I'll talk about those in a few moments. And then the workforce programs are licensures, credentials, apprenticeships, continuing education. But what is really neat and what's been evolving significantly over the last 2 years, and I thought you guys might find interesting, is those two fields are really starting to merge together, and it's making some powerful partnerships and spin-offs for our employers, for our students, and for our community as well. A little more about those credit programs I spoke of. Most of you are very familiar with those because they lead to things like 2-year associate degrees. They lead to the ability to transfer into 4-year institutions. We have over 40 guaranteed transfer agreements with 4-year universities in Virginia and West Virginia that they walk right in as a sophomore, junior level and don't skip a beat. Everything transfers seamlessly. So a lot of folks are familiar with that program. Folks have heard of dual enrollment, whereby high school students are able to take high school curriculum and also get credit for college. My son's a junior at Skyline, is currently dual enrolled in 12 credits, which is awesome. And then we also partner with 4-year degree institutions such as ODU. We actually have Old Dominion University on site at the Lord Fairfax, Middletown, and Fauquier campuses, and they do bachelor, master's, and doctorate degrees as well. As a side note, I don't know, many of you all are very familiar with the fact that our flagship campus is in Middletown, just about 11 miles that way. But we also have a campus in Fauquier, and we have 2 centers as well. In Luray, Page County, we have a center, and we're about to build a brand new one behind the Walmart, if anyone's familiar where the Walmart is in Luray. And then we also have a center in Vint Hill, which is a stone's throw from the Gainesville line, which is a whole new frontier of our service region that is just exploding. So the neat thing about community college, and many of you are aware, is that we're significantly lower tuition than a 4-year state institution. Our goal is to always remain at least half the tuition of the traditional 4-year institution. So right now, for example, a credit at Lord Fairfax is $154 in-state, and in-state credit at Virginia Tech is $380. So that gives you some idea of the value of that. Shenandoah University, which is private, it's $900 a credit hour. So it's a wonderful value right here in your community. And that was the vision of Governor Godwin back in the 60s, is to not have higher education being an elitist privilege, but that it's open and accessible to all. So when he envisioned the community college system in Virginia back in the 60s, he wanted this open access, open affordability. What's very interesting is that this is not just for Lord Fairfax I'm speaking, it's for all of higher education, particularly academic and credit programs. And enrollment in those programs has been declining pretty steadily over the past 7 years. Any ideas why that would be happening? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Money.
Yeah, student loan debt definitely speaks to it. Any other ideas? All right, we'll talk a little bit about that. All right. Another interesting tidbit, and again, this isn't just for Lord Fairfax Community College, this is the entire VCCS statistics. In the summer, we see 100 applications for students who plan on coming to Lord Fairfax or a community college that fall. Of those 100 applications that come in, only 51 students actually show up that fall. The following spring, only 21 of those original 100 come back. And of that original 100 applications, only 14 actually graduate from that pool of applicants. Another interesting tidbit is that our birth rate trends are going down and declining as well. So we're seeing an interesting competition that never was there before. We see a lot of four-year universities being much more aggressive in recruiting students that typically were headed to the community college because their enrollments are down as well. So back to declining enrollments, one of these significant evolutions that we've seen in the past 24, 36 months is that the mentality of college for all has really become contested. It used to be a point of pride for every K-12 school system. At graduation, they would brag, 96% of our students are going on to college. 98% of our students are going on to college. And that's a wonderful thing. However, the rest of the story is that less than 40% of those freshmen actually graduate on time. If at all, they quietly will usually, I see a lot of heads shaking, very familiar with these figures, but these aren't talked about so much, but in the last 3 years, they've really started to become headlines. What happens to these people? Because what's really interesting on our side, particularly being a community college, and thanks Bill Long for the shout out, we hear from employers all the time, we cannot find enough people to hire. We cannot find a technically skilled, a workforce that's ready to come to work. Where are they all going? If they're not finishing college, we're not seeing them come back in the workforce. What's happening? Where are they disappearing to? And even more so interesting, and some of you may identify with this as well, if you have children who have perhaps graduated from college with a degree and I don't know, they often have a very hard time finding degrees in their relevant profession. And they're accepting entry-level positions for which they are actually pretty overqualified for. And again, the employers are saying we can't find the right skilled employees to fill our openings. So there's this real kind of dichotomy going on with the market pull and push of an educated workforce. Now, I mentioned earlier the workforce programs that the community college focuses on. Those are very much focused on skilled acquisition and credential attainment. So they're taking classes that are either single classes that lead to a very focused skill set, like understanding how to plot pivot charts. Or they're actually getting into fast track programs that take weeks or months that leave them with a high wage credential. And I'll give you some examples of that in just a short moment. But these are much shorter time frame programs. They're done in weeks and months, not years, not semesters. And they, in the past, had not had access to financial aid. And that's a huge shift that has also changed in Virginia. What's really wonderful is, and I showed a picture on my very first slide about these silos, we've learned that these pathways don't need to be mutually exclusive. You can start in one pathway and build to another, and I'll give you a great example. We have a nursing program at Lord Fairfax. Nursing's in pretty high demand. Our nursing program can only take 80 candidates every 18 months. Nursing programs have clinical requirements, which mean they have to spend time at the hospital under preceptors. That's a bottleneck. We can't change that bottleneck. So individuals who maybe aspire in middle school to go be a nurse and don't get into the program right away may get disappointed and think, well, I guess nursing isn't for me, I'll go do something else. When in fact there are multiple entry points to becoming a nurse. For example, if you went ahead and just got your CNA, which takes about 6 weeks, or your medical clinical assisting certificate, which takes about 3 months, those are both in high demand at Valley Health Systems. Once you get in the door at Valley Health Systems, they have a 100% employee tuition reimbursement program. All right, so that way you are in the workforce, but you're also working for an employer who will help pay for your education to hopefully ultimately become that nurse. You're much more competitive to get into our nursing program if you're in the workforce, in the healthcare field, and you already have an entry-level credential. So there is an example of a stackable pathway in which credentials can ultimately lead to that end goal, and maybe in a more productive, financially sound way. Another really interesting fact are, and this is pulled from the Virginia Employment Commission, individuals who at least get an entry-level credential, that is proven to be the single fastest way to get out of living at the poverty level. individuals who are living at or below the poverty level who get one of those credentials that takes weeks or months, that is the single fastest way to break the poverty cycle. So some of the things that we're really working on at the community college is really to have a single door, one door entry, so that individuals, no matter where they are in their walk of life, not knowing what they want to do, whether they want a degree program, whether they want to transfer, whether they want to go directly out into the workforce, that we're able to give them a full picture of all their choices. It used to be a student would walk into the college and automatically we put them in a degree program. That was just bam, that's what happened, that's what was done. So we're working a lot more with understanding ways to get them their job, not necessarily their degree. So if their goal is to work in the healthcare system, maybe we don't send them in a degree program to begin with. Maybe we start them in a credential and put them on that pathway. When I spoke with you the last time, 2 years ago, this was really the game changer that Virginia was beginning to understand. I don't know if you guys remember it. It was called the 1-2-7 equation. And the governor and the chancellor at the time were really speaking a lot on this platform. And basically what that means is this is the equation of employee demand in the workforce. So for every employer that needs one employee with an advanced degree, like a lawyer or a doctor or a CPA, a scientist. We can go back to the hospital, that doctor. For every doctor, they need at least 2 individuals with a bachelor's degree. Things like your engineers or your accountants or your BA nurse. But for every 2 of those employees, they need at least 7 employees with skill sets. Things like CNAs, HVAC technicians, electricians, welders. When you look at a hospital, it's so funny. I love asking my kids this, or my kids' friends are with me in the car and we drive by a Winchester Medical Center or a War Memorial Hospital. I'll ask, what kind of jobs do you think are there? And they'll say, doctors work there, nurses work there. Well, the irony is, that's a small fraction of the workforce to run that facility. They have individuals in food services, they have individuals in laundry services, they have individuals running their payroll, they have individuals hiring all those people, they have individuals doing the electrical, the HVAC, maintaining that facility. There are far more employees running the operational system of that hospital than there is direct patient care. And that's almost true for any facility that you go by. So that is the 1-2-7 problem in the sense that employers say we do a great job of providing the ones, which are those advanced degrees for employers, and a pretty darn good job of pumping out the 2s, which is that bachelor level set of skills for employers. What we get the most as far as near-full, and when I say we, I mean educators as well as public government, is we cannot find enough of the 7s. We need access to more of the 7s. So one of the things that we've really focused on is being able to target 3 very specific audiences in the Lord Fairfax Community Service Region. The employed that are maybe ready for that next level in their career to get them an additional credential so they can move up that career pathway. The unemployed, which right now there's not a lot of, we're at 3% unemployment. But in my time with the college, unemployment in this community has been as high as 9%. So that's cyclical, so we have to adjust our programs to meet that demand. What we see a lot right now are underemployed. In fact, if you have not had the United Way come yet to speak, and maybe you have, but they've really tapped onto a unique population that they call ALICE. Not our local United Way, but the entire nation. The United Way has really identified a population group that they like to call ALICE. ALICE basically stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. Woo! That's a mouthful. I haven't had a full cup of coffee yet. So what that means is the working poor. These are individuals who are out working. They may even be working 2 or 3 jobs, but they are one instance away from not being able to make a mortgage payment or not being able to make end meets. In other words, if Susie breaks her arm and there's unexpected medical bills and there needs to be time missed from work, they're all of a sudden in a cycle and can't dig out. That's ALICE. And in many of our counties, Lord Fairfax serves 7 counties, the ALICE population is over 50%. It's shocking. But those are the individuals who, if they had an additional credential or they had just a little more skills training, they could really increase their earning power and not be one paycheck away from calamity. So that's a population that we've really started focusing on to reach and make sure, because in a lot of cases it's awareness that these programs are there and that they're affordable, that there's a means to help them obtain those credentials in a quick way and that they do not have to go into student loan debt for. Some of the credentials, examples of some of the credentials, and this is just a very short list, you see on the screen, they're all offered through Lord Fairfax Community College. They are all considered high demand credentials. So in other words, truck drivers, CDL license is the #1 in-demand credential in Virginia, many of which have a $5,000 sign-on bonus right now. Regional drivers, which means they're home every night, start out around $40,000–$45,000 a year. Over-the-road drivers, which mean they're able to go coast to coast, earn upwards of $80,000–$90,000 a year. So these are just some examples of credentials that are offered through the community college. The most recent one that we've added on are heavy equipment operators. We cannot keep up with the pace of the infrastructure being built in Northern Virginia. But guess where Northern Virginia is getting their workforce? Right here. And there is right now a shortage of 5,000 heavy equipment operators. The build out of the 495 expansion, the 395 expansion, and the inner loop of I-66 that's being built out now, they have a projection of 5,000 short. We have the heavy equipment operator program, that's a 6-week program. They earn $50,000 within 6 months of getting those jobs. And that doesn't include the overtime that they get either. What was really hard up until 2 years ago for a lot of these credential programs I just gave you an example of is you all are very familiar probably with academic programs and credit programs that have access to federal, state, and local grants, Pell Grants, federal financial aid, etc. There was no financial assistance for students in those high demand skilled occupations. That 1-2-7 equation I spoke of earlier, there's financial assistance for those ones. There's financial assistance for the twos. There's no financial assistance for the sevens. And the General Assembly in Virginia changed that 2 years ago when they realized that our neighbors to the north in Maryland and our neighbors to the south in North Carolina invested in those programs because they saw them as a means of economic development. They were choosing to invest in economic development and supporting the businesses and employers. So Virginia caught on about 2 years ago and initially put about $20 million into the funding pot for 2 years of this financial aid for credentials. The first year we had access to those funds, we blew it out in 5 months. We spent all of it. When I say we, I mean the community college systems in Virginia spent it out in 5 months. That's how in demand these programs work. It's called the Workforce Credential Grant, and basically it underwrites 2/3 of the cost of a high demand credential. And if individuals demonstrate that they have financial need, then there's also a second set of funds that provides coverage for what they can't pay for. All it requires to apply for that funding is you have to be a resident of Virginia. I'll give you an example of what that looks like. I thought I had yeah. So for example, I mentioned the CDL program, the Commercial Driver License Program. It's actually a 5-week program. We buffer in 6 weeks for the testing window because sometimes it's hard to get in with the DMV for a testing window up at the weigh station. The scales on 81 is where they have to go for their testing. That program is a $4,500 program. They go full-time for 5 weeks, and then we leave the buffer of the 6 weeks for training, the 6th week for testing and training. So now with that Workforce Credential Grant, they only have to cover 1/3 of that tuition. So instead of paying $4,500 for that quick credential, students now only need to come up with $1,500. And if they demonstrate financial need, they only have to pay $150 for that credential. They're out working in a full-time job within weeks, earning a livable wage. The General Assembly, when they put this funding in place, demanded accountability for taxpayers. So one of the things that's really interesting is that, as it says in yellow, students have to pay 1/3 of the program. The state picks up the rest, But if for any reason the student doesn't successfully complete the program, they have to pay back a third of it to the state. And it's held because we're a state institution, so we can garnish anything we want. Well, not anything we want, but there's that accountability hook in it that they have to see it through. They have to be committed to see that through. This fiscal year, we received $9.5 million. And the General Assembly is hard at work right now to get next year's funding allocation. They've asked for an additional $5 million over top of the $9.5 million. Whether we'll get it or not, we'll see. At the community college, Lord Fairfax in particular, these are some of the fast forward programs that are eligible for that grant funding. Not all programs are eligible. We have to prove that it's in high demand. They just won't, like, for example, I think farriers should get, credential training. My farrier works really hard on my poor horse, but it isn't considered a high demand. We have to provide labor market data to prove that the jobs are in high demand, not only in high demand, but they're going to earn a living wage in these programs. So these are some examples of areas at Lord Fairfax Community College that we have this grant funding available. Everything, as we mentioned, from commercial driver's license to phlebotomists, to HVAC technicians, manufacturing technicians, etc. And again, these credential programs take, at max, a few months, not semesters, not years. This is an example of the heavy equipment operator program that I shared as well. That is an 8-week program. They can either do it on weekdays in the evening, just a few evenings a week, not every evening of the week. We do it Wednesday and Friday evening, or they can do a weekend class. And again, the regular cost of that credential is $27.48, but because it's a fast forward credential, a student only pays $9.16. And if they demonstrate financial need, they're paying less than $100. This is a really interesting program because employers guarantee an interview to students who go through this program. So it's not just that they come for training. We're trying to give individuals a full picture of they're coming for a career. Yes, they're getting a high demand wage credential, but the employers actually come into the last class and we do speed dating interviews where they move from company to company to company to interview, many being given job offers on the spot. These are some examples of other fast track programs, meaning again, they're completed in weeks or months, not semesters or years. But these are examples of programs that didn't qualify for the Fast Forward grant because the labor market data didn't prove that they were in high demand. But they're still very valuable, sought after employability skills. So it's everything from QuickBooks to welding, because a lot of folks, for example, welding is part of a job, but it's not a job. So it doesn't have the volume to demonstrate it's a high need program. Dental assisting, payroll, pharmacy technicians, etc. Teacher recertification is a huge one that we do. Teachers must have 180 hours of continuing education to maintain their licensure, but because they already have that credential and that's required of their job, that doesn't count for Fast Forward grant program funding. We also do a ton of other things at the community college that's meant to increase professional development opportunities. We're not just about getting individuals their initial skill set. We're about helping people to continue to grow, excel, and get better and better. Bill came up to me and said, hey, I hear you guys are doing Disney again. Looking forward to that. We bring the Disney Institute every March to do the Disney Leadership Institute at Lord Fairfax. We partner with national organizations like LeaderCast to do leadership events at all of our locations. Administrative professional days, etc. So we do a lot of events to support professional development as well, because it's expensive. A lot of you I know have gone personally for professional development. By the time you fly, get a hotel room, etc., it's not just your time away from home, but all of those expenses add up. So we feel like we can do it just as well in your backyard, and you can go sleep in your own bed at night. So we really try to offer a number of those a year. So if you're interested, at your table I've left a couple of our catalogs. It's our winter-spring catalog that has more information about a lot of these workforce programs I just shared with you. Our website's there. The closest offices to this proximity is our Middletown campus and the Carr Community Center, and also in our Fauquier campus. For those of you on the Linden side, you're probably just as close to our Fauquier campus. So thank you for having me this morning. Our objective is to facilitate learning opportunities that connect and empower individuals, our organizations here in the service region, and the communities we serve. So let's see here, 7:42, woo! That's why I was holding my phone. I'm a Rotarian, I know the hook. So at this point in time, that was a lot this early in the morning. I think I have time for a few questions. Sure. Okay, great. Any questions, comments? Yes, ma'am.
Some of the high-need training areas, I've run into a problem administering government jobs, only finding that we need people in those skills, but finding that I'm only allowed to employ them part-time.
Wow, yeah, with the Affordability Care Act.
Are you running into much of that?
Our college really struggled, just as an empathetic example, as a community college, and we're not unique to this, our backbone is built on our adjunct faculty.
Yeah.
And so when the Affordability Care Act hit and we were not allowed to have the X amount of hours taught per adjunct faculty, instead of having 200 adjunct faculty, now we need 400 adjunct faculty to do the same amount of course delivery. So on a professional level, just at my own organization, that impacted our workforce significantly, yeah. Yes, sir.
Jeanine, how do you get this message to, and obviously you have 7 middle schoolers here that heard it, but how do you get that message to the thousands of high schoolers that we have that are being inundated with a you've got to go to a 4-year university mentality, which, and I'm making this up, anyway, which quite frankly has turned into a racket. I mean, a lot of 4-year colleges just turned into money rackets. And when I look at what some of these kids are paying back, the Sally Mae and all these other loans they're paying back, I mean, they're saddling themselves in the first year with a lifetime of debt, not to mention they make it through 4. So how do you take that message, which God bless you for it, and let a bunch of good kids who would make incredible welders, plumbers, electricians, mechanics, how do you take that into the high schools and convince not just them, but their parents, and God forbid, their administrators?
So three responses to that, and I'll try and be as concise as possible. I've been with college for 18 years now. Never, as in more the last 2 years, have we been allowed to come into high schools and share this message. Up until 2 years ago, we were never even allowed to talk about this in the high schools because it was all about sending them to college and the mentality of sending them to college. So one of the neat things that we're very careful about, college is incredibly important. Those are all still valued opportunities, but going to these programs is also going to college. So we're trying to change the definition of college means a post-secondary credential, be that a PhD or journeyman in plumbing. That is still going to college, and that's a secondary credential. So we really have started to try and expand the vision of what going to college means. What gets a lot of parents' attention is no student loan debt and earning potential as high as the degree. In fact, I spoke at a dinner last Wednesday night in Reston, and the Chief Workforce Development Officer appointed by Governor Northam was on the panel with me, and she told the story. She graduated with her PhD at the same time that her dad decided to go back to school and get his journeyman in electricity. And so she asked her dad, "Dad, we both graduated at the same time. Come on, let's have a graduation party together." He said, no, you've got degrees stacked higher than you are tall. I don't want to do that. And she said, "But Dad, you make more money than I do." So that, I think, is a really interesting point. But the third thing I was going to share is that it takes a village. We've seen this trend coming for about 7-8 years, but the ability of having parents and guidance counselors and students be more aware of these amazing opportunities and intentionally allowing them to stack into other opportunities. You gave the example of a plumber, and we do that training. We do journeyman in plumbing, but the rest of the picture that the rest of the population don't see is that's your chance to be a small business owner. That's your chance to be an entrepreneur. That's your chance to not just do one thing, but to really grow it into something exceptional. I don't know if any of you are familiar with J.R. Snyder's organization in Middleburg. He runs the plumbing shop in Middleburg. Let me tell you what, all of his guys make more than $100,000. So it is an incredible opportunity. So getting those messages out And Mike Rowe has done a wonderful job with the Mike Rowe Foundation, Dirty Jobs. He does a great job of painting these pictures and these careers in the minds and bringing nobility back to work. Bringing nobility back to work is an art. So, all right, great question, thank you.